is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment. Our number one enemy is ignorance. And I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organizations that try to keep things secret, and those organizations which distort true information to make it false. So the result is we see wars and we see corrupt governments continue on.
I do have to say, Julian Assange definitely had a very reasonable approach when it came to stopping wars. Too bad the United States illegally locked him up, tortured him, threw away the key for the horrible crimes of journalism. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of wearechange.org, and we have to admit that there is a lot of ignorance going around, especially with the current events unfolding right now in Ukraine, as the situation there is getting more desperate and insane, as the reality of the situation is getting further and further away from us. And that's why we're going to be doing our best trying to understand this situation fully, as of course when it comes to human conflict, the truth absolutely matters, because as Julian Assange said, populations have to be fooled into wars. There's so much news to talk about, we're just going to jump right into it, as of course, if you remember, not so long ago, people were being punished for not giving up their bodily autonomy to the state, as many multinational corporations fired and punished individuals for not getting a procedure that was mandated to them. Today, we're finding out that one major corporation, United Airlines, is backtracking on this policy, as it announced that the workers that were arbitrarily punished before can now return to work. This as now many private entities, states, cities, and jurisdictions have gotten rid of a lot of the mandates, restrictions, and lockdowns, which were ridiculous in my opinion from the very beginning. As of course now we have a huge distraction that of course is keeping us away from any kind of accountability from the last 2 years, which according to the New York Times, they are alluding that forgetting what the government has put us through the last 2 years is a good thing, as they are literally using images of NPCs having their brains vacuumed. This as the Biden administration, for some strange, unpractical, unreasonable reason, has just decided to extend mask mandates on airplanes through next month, which according to U.S. Senator Rand Paul, he will be fighting these mandates that according to the latest data are just absolutely pointless. We should also remember that because of these mandates, lockdowns, restrictions, and the disruption of the global supply chains done by government within the last 2 years, we are now also dealing with a financial crisis. And as the majority of Americans are living paycheck by paycheck, as gas, groceries, and life is becoming more expensive, Congress also just gave itself a 21% raise, as the Biden administration is literally trying to blame everything on Russia, as of course the consequences of their actions and even the actions of the previous president of the United States has absolutely recklessly printed money out of thin air, created record high inflation, which many financial experts essentially call a tax on people's savings, as of course people's money is literally being evaporated right in front of them. The new inflation numbers are 7.9%, the highest that they have been in 40 years. Those numbers are of course going to be made a lot worse, especially with an utterly insane domestic energy policy by the Biden administration, who of course with more regulations, more controls of the economy, are literally driving it into the ground. And in my opinion, this is being done deliberately, something of course that I talk about on lukeuncensored.com. But this problem is only going to be made worse, not only with domestic energy production policies that are absolutely ridiculous, but also the reports that we're getting that are coming out of Saudi Arabia and the UAE that allegedly, according to some reports, are not even picking up the phone when the President of the United States is calling them, as we described in a previous video a couple days ago, that it's in the interest of oil-producing companies to, of course, keep oil high, as, of course, their profits also will be very high. This is going to lead to a very chaotic situation on the world stage, especially with food prices going up, and that's exactly what I am going to be talking about later on today on LukeUncensored.com. If you haven't joined that platform, what are you waiting for? We have 3 master classes available for you, only exclusively for members. And if you're interested in learning about survival, traveling, expatting, journalism, social media, we have 3 major master classes with hours and hours, 60 plus videos available for you only on LukeUncensored.com, along with a new video later on today, which will continue the conversation from this very important topic, which of course also revolves around the World Economic Forum, which has recently taken off Vladimir Putin off of their website and are freezing him and Russia off by cutting off all relations with them. Lots of very interesting developments. Click the link down in the description below right now to find out more. Now, I do have to say, covering what's been recently happening in Ukraine has been extremely difficult. There is a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of propaganda. There are a lot of powerful interests intervening, sometimes staging, sometimes faking accounts and reports of what's actually going on, of course, in order to attain power. One of the strategies that we personally have been implementing during these very difficult times is, of course, to lay out the stories, to tell you what one side is saying, what the other side is saying, to counter that, and to let you decide as an informed citizen, as an informed human being, what the truth actually is. I think that's the most reasonable thing that we should be trying to do here during these very difficult times. But sadly, some people see themselves as the arbitrators of truth. Even surprisingly, the CEO and founder of DuckDuckGo that just announced that his search engine will now be curating content for individuals and downranking sites that are alleged to be associated with disinformation. Who gets to decide what's truth or not, especially with the situation in Ukraine when we are getting reports that cannot be verified during a time of conflict? Well, who the hell knows? And this announcement by DuckDuckGo was not taken well, even with Mike Cernovich, an online commentator, mentioning that this is the end of DuckDuckGo, as many people have announced that they're going to be deleting the app and no longer using their services. Now, obviously, truth is the first casualty of war, but when it comes to a life or death situation, when it comes to a major conflict, truth is essential during these very difficult times in order to make sense of what's going on here. And yes, there has been some Russian disinformation surrounding with the latest events unfolding in Ukraine, but there also has been a lot of Western disinformation, as even major corporate media institutions like the New York Times have argued that disinformation is needed for morale, even though they are propagating fake stories out there to the general public. And obviously, all of us being adults here, we should understand that Russia is also censoring and hiding information that makes its country look bad, and the West is doing the same. It also looks like the whole country of Russia has been canceled by many top multinational corporations, a lot of economic sanctions launched on them by the United States. This has brought Russia and China closer together on the geopolitical stage, with also Russia just announcing that they will be nationalizing and ceasing assets from foreign firms that are leaving its country and deciding to boycott it. The United States has sanctioned so much of the Russian economy, it looks like they have nothing else to sanction anymore, and now the United States and NATO will be doing a war game called Operation Saber Strike in Estonia, sending a lot of their military hardware there, as Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States in Poland, declared that, quote, "We will defend every inch of NATO," specifically issuing warnings to Vladimir Putin of Russia in preparation for potentially the conflict spilling over to the rest of Europe, which there's a potential of that happening. Now, I do have to say, Kamala's speeches inside of Poland are a bit awkward, especially after the debacle surrounding the MiG fighter jets that Poland was reportedly and then not reportedly going to send to Ukraine after the United States was reportedly going to replenish it. According to some initial reports that I've been seeing, Poland was skeptical if the United States would keep its promise to the United States. States, especially with the unpredictability when it comes to Biden's foreign policy. And allegedly, this was one reason why Kamala Harris was sent there in order to try to fix this mess. Now, in the news and online, we are seeing a lot of reports, photos and videos coming from a maternity hospital in Ukraine that, of course, was shelled and bombed by Russian forces. The president of Ukraine, of course, put this video on social media. A lot of corporate media in the West have been sharing it extensively. And according to CNN, this incident is why the United States and its allies need to stop Russia immediately, using it as, of course, an excuse for more intervention. The president of Ukraine is citing this incident as evidence of genocide and, quote, the ultimate justification for a humanitarian intervention, or in more realistic terms, expanding this conflict involving other countries and making this war even bigger, which is the true reality of it. Now, the Russians admitted to the bombing of this specific facility, and according to them and their sources, this maternity hospital was taken over by the Azov battalion, and that specifically nurses and general staff were told to leave that facility before it was bombed. This is, again, according to the Russians. Are they telling the truth here? Who knows? U.S. Congressman Ted Lieu used this incident by sending out a photo of the huge blast radius that was caused by this Russian strike on this maternity hospital, specifically with the caption calling for the deployment of U.S. fighter jets into the region, as of course he also retweeted in this specific instant a reporter who called himself previously a brother in arms with the Azov battalion. The Russians are even going as far as to claim that there was staged actors at the scene of this bombing. And again, I haven't seen any kind of evidence other than just two pictures of someone who might potentially resemble someone else on Instagram. Again, who knows what in the world is going on here, but these are the claims made by the official Russian embassy in the United Kingdom. Obviously, it's in their interest to muddy the waters of their bombing of this medical facility. The Associated Press has also reported that 17 people were hurt from this bombing. ABC News is now reporting that 3 people have died, including 1 child. What are the exact numbers here? Well, it's almost impossible to verify, but obviously any life loss is an absolute tragedy. Now, with this conflict expanding, heating up, and only getting worse from here, we could of course expect a lot more civilian casualties in this conflict, and that's the horrible reality of war and why we have always been strictly anti-war. If any person decides to take a life on the orders of a politician, they are, of course, someone that deserves to be called out, as war is a failure of civilization and a byproduct of failed states and failed diplomacy. The majority of people don't want war. A lot of them are just fooled into it, contrived and manipulated into it by, of course, dark, sinister forces that benefit off of it. There has been a concerted effort from both sides to try to distort reality, but there should be nothing distorting the true reality of war, which is horror and evil incarnated on the face of this earth. Again, no one is really the winner of war. The poorest and the most innocent are, of course, paying the price. And during these difficult times, I think it's important to call for de-escalation, to call for ceasefires, to call for agreements and deals to be made to end this lunacy. Because in the grand scheme of things, a lot of this is, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous and stupid. Russian politicians have corrupted Ukraine. Now American politicians are corrupting Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are paying the ultimate price as politicians throw their pour to fight for the virtues and wants of politicians that want more power and money for themselves. The Ukraine conflict will most likely be a limited conflict, a proxy conflict between the West and the East. According to a lot of the photos and videos we are seeing, Russia has already sustained significant losses to its forces. There's even reports of them sending reinforcements all the way from across their entire country. There's also reports of 8 Russian generals being fired. And of course, this is just the beginning of what some people expect to be a very long, ongoing conflict that's going to be waged in the coming days and weeks ahead. ahead. And I think it's fair to say that if we put our faith in government in order to solve this problem, that we're going to have a lot more problems ahead of us. And I think that's one of the clear things that is very evident here. There's also a lot of crazy news surrounding the biological research that the United States has been doing inside of Ukraine. I'm going to save that topic for LukeUncensored.com. Again, very difficult situation to report on. Lots of bull, lots of lies from both sides, but I hope I did an okay job of presenting the sides of the story from each side for you to decide what the truth is according to yourself. And again, I could have gotten some things wrong. Probably did. If you think I did, let me know down in the comment section below. I, of course, will admit if I ever was wrong. The only constant that I really do see here is that this conflict will get worse from here and that it needs to stop. Other than that, we're just getting a whole bunch of crazy reports. Who knows what to believe anymore, but if there's one thing to believe in, it should be in peace. And I know it sounds like a hippy-dippy emotion, but I think it matters more than ever, especially right now. That's just my perspective. Again, we've been doing our best to cover this particularly difficult topic as best as we can. If you think we did a good job, share this video with your friends and family members. I provided more context about this complex situation in this video, which I definitely recommend you should watch. I got a lot more to say. Going to be saying it, LukeUncensored.com. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. This is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.